Corona Lucy Fraser, also known as Caro of Lamode St. George, she was a former employee of the Ministry of Agriculture, passed away on Sunday, 5th February, at the age of 84. She was the mother of Alicia Fraser Hosford, Jacob Fraser in England, Helen Stephanie Fraser, and Andy Fraser, sister of Errol Lewis and Clarice Fraser, mother-in-law of Gillian Fraser in England, and Innocent Wayne Lazama, sister-in-law of Monica Lewis, grandmother of Petra Fraser, Portia Fraser, Michael Akimo Hosford in the USA, Akeisha Fraser, Andre Allard Fraser, Samantha Allard McBurney, and Andrea Fraser, Raquel, Travis, and Lashonda Fraser in Canada, Marcus and Donisha Daniel in Anguilla, Marlon Lazama in the USA, great-grandmother of 14 including Cheryl, Charisse, Aurel, Makisha, Michael, Haley, and Demarkin in Anguilla, grandmother-in-law of Dr. Delina Hosford in Florida, and Kizzy Allard Fraser. Many other relatives and friends including Agatha Harris and the family of Lamode, the Sam and Cape families of Lamode, Rita Haynes and family, Michael and Stanley Fraser, Mr. Welcome Ray and family of Carriacou, Edgehill family, Jarvis family, and Lennox family, Miss Cynthia Alexander, Matthew Telesford, also known as Slate, Karima Campbell and family of Lamode, Annie Allard and family, Sylvia Telesford and family, Sister Nicole Williams Fraser, Sharon Duncan, and Gemma Thomas and family in the USA, the Patrick family of the USA, doctors and nurses of the female medical ward of the General Hospital, many other relatives and friends of Lamode and surrounding areas too numerous to mention. The funeral of the late Corona Lucy Fraser, also known as Caro of Lamode St. George, a former employee of the Ministry of Agriculture, will take place on Monday, 6th March at 1 p.m. with tribute and service at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at Our Lady Help of Christian Catholic Church, Beaulieu St. George, and the entombment will be at the Beaulieu Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
Leroy Lennox Charles, also known as Preacher or Papa, of Laborie St. George, died on Friday, February 10, 2023, at the age of 78. He is survived by Gladys Walters, Daniel, Melissa and Larissa Walters, and Keston Thomas, brother of Aubrey Davis and Alfred Charles in Grenada, and Leon Charles in the USA, uncle of Jacqueline and Donna in England, Keith, Alicia, Naomi and Jamar in Grenada, Christine and Paula, Troy and Ernie in America, and Shirley Ann, Allison and Javon in Canada, great-uncle of Tiana in England. Many other relatives, friends and neighbors of Laborie, including Terrace, Christine and Francis Charles, Daisy Sr., Myrtle James, Leonard Alexander and family, Arthur Stephen and family, Lydia Celestine and family, the Granger family in Grenada, the USA and England, and Peter and the boys by the shop, and members of the Iberian Church. The funeral service for the late Leroy Lennox Charles, also known as Preacher or Papa, of Laborie St. George, will take place on Tuesday, March 7th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the People's Church St. Paul's according to Iberian rites, and interment will be at the Mount Airy Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
David Andrew Monroe, also known as brother of Victoria St. Mark, passed away on Monday, 16th January at the age of 59. He was the close and dear friend of Janet Fraser, father of Nicole in the USA, Nikisha and Nikita Paul in Grenada, stepfather of Ketisha Bernard in Canada, grandfather of Kyrie, Zora, and Zanaki Paul, father-in-law of Charlene Paul in the USA, brother of Geraldine, Marva, Sean, and Sharon in the UK, Alistair, Carol, and Winifred in the USA, Martha in Tobago, Stephen in Barbados, Ruth, Ruthlyn, Peter, Willis, Jacqueline, Beggs, Joycelyn, Aliston, Katie, Rebecca, and Sanita in Grenada, nephew of Ginger, Vita, Maros, and Nathaniel, uncle of many including Donnie, Donna, Akira, Samantha, Nevron, Nana, Avenel Carlson, and P.C. Addison Fraser. Many cousins including Natasha, Clara, and Francis Monroe. Macosta Charles, John, Linton, teacher Jennifer Clement, Jenny, Denrick, and Heston. Caregivers Delcy Phillip and Malika Patrick. Many other relatives and friends in the UK, USA, Canada, and Grenada including Cheney Joseph, past and present executive and members of GFA and Hurricane Sports Club, Grassroots Football Club, the Football Fraternity in Grenada, Wayne Francis, Dorset McKell, Finley Fletcher, Barrington, Mrs. Clarice Modeste, and Julie Dubois, Peter Shala Andrew and family, Taisha Paul, the Monroe, Charles Fraser, Clement, Paul and Mitchell families of Victoria, Glenda Frederick and family, Chester Alfred and family, friends and neighbors of Coast Guard, Diamond, Waltham, and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late David Andrew Monroe, also known as brother of Victoria St. Mark, will take place on Wednesday, 8 March at 1 p.m. The funeral service will be held at the Victoria R.C. Church St. Mark, and the interment will be at the Coast Guard Cemetery. Funeral arrangements have been entrusted to Lacroix Brothers Funeral Home.
Nezra Lewis of Brazan, who resided at Mount Rush St. George, passed away on Wednesday, 15 February 2023, at the age of 46, left to mourn her common-law husband Julian Frederick, sisters Sheena Lewis, Sally and Lewis Haynes, Angela Lewis Joseph, Doysel Lewis Amede, and Catherine Regis in the USA, brother Kelvin Lewis, nieces and nephews Delon and Nazim Lewis, Sunil Samuel, Deshawn, Shamar and Skylar Amede, Delia Joseph, and Ariana Regis in the USA, brothers-in-law Martin Haynes, Shane Amede, Delvin Joseph, and Henry Regis in the USA, aunts and uncles Gloria and Joseph Lewis, Laurel, Lorna, Violet, Leadon, and Kester. Other relatives and friends including Cuthbert, Jade and Tiffany in England, Senator Claudette Joseph and Neilon Franklin, the Lewis family of Brazan, the Joseph family of Brazan and in the UK, the Watts family in the USA, Joy and Roland, Nurse Simone Cador, Brainman and Gaia Bernard, Novi Alexis, and friends and neighbors of Brazan and Monkrush and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Nezra Lewis of Brazan, who resided at Monkrush St. George, will take place on Wednesday, 8th March at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Garden of Remembrance Funeral Chapel, Cemetery Hill, St. George's, and interment will be at the Wilberforce Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Tilda Monica Seathall, also known as Miss Bean, of George V. Street, Grenville, St. Andrew, passed away on Friday, 17th February 2023, at the age of 91. She was the mother of O'Brien and Lincoln in Grenada, Merlene and Winston in the USA, sister of Louie, Sheila, George, Eric, Norbert, Franklin, Carly, Kenneth, and William Salim. Grandmother of 13, including Brian, Damon, Brent, Sabrina, Camila, and Samantha. Great-grandmother of 4. Aunt of many, including Purdy, Jerry, and Jamie Salim. Mother-in-law of Brenda and Michelle. Sister-in-law of Maudlin Ratchman and Glenda Salim. Many other relatives and friends, including Francis, Miss Florentina Noel, employees of Seathall's block plant, employees of Seathall's imports and distribution, the Salim, Nayak, Ramdani, and Budlal families, and friends and neighbors of George V. Street, Grenville, and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Tilda Monica Seathall, also known as Miss Bean, of George V. Street, Grenville, St. Andrew, will take place on Wednesday, March 8th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grenville Pentecostal Lighthouse, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Darius Nicholas, also known as Zebu and Owl of Caliste, St. George, died on Tuesday, 21st February 2023, at the age of 56, Left to mourn his passing are his adopted mother and aunt, Angelica and Nicholas Belgrave, stepfather Martin Francis, 12 brothers and sisters, Bassanio Nicholas, Portia Nicholas, Delia Ephraim in Antigua, Maxand, Desiree Skeet in Barbados, Brixand, Daria Marast, Christopher, George, Philip, Georgia, and Charles. 31 nieces and nephews including Todd, Rhiandria, Redon, Aria, Alex, Jamin, Doran, Jamie, Jamelia, Ramona, Janique, and Angelique. Many aunts and uncles including Dennis Fletcher, Bernadette Alexander, Nelson Nicholas, and Mary Belgrave. In-laws Jacqueline Nicholas and Albert Marast. Other family members and friends Cindy, Sanaya, Ezra, Paula, Nell, Nathalie, Juan, Francisca, Narissa, Claudia, Lester, Patsy, Leve, Anisita, Destiny, Bull, Arlene Redhead, and family, the boys and girls under the rubber tree, all the people of Caliste, the Nicholas, Fletcher, Belgrave, Philip, and Duncan families of St. Patrick, Grove, St. Paul's, the Limes, Caliste, and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Darius Nicholas, also known as Zebu and Owl, of Caliste St. George, will take place on Wednesday, March 8th at 1:30 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Our Lady of Mount Carmel RC Church, Caliste, followed by interment at the Family Cemetery, Caliste. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Magdalene Lalit, also known as Magdalene Tilloch, of Cornet's Walk, Grove, who resided at Clogier St. John, passed away on Wednesday, 1st March 2023, at the age of 77. She was the sister of Rosalind Quatty, Simon Gunpot, and Fenton Bootu in England, and Verna Dabrio in the USA. Aunt of many in Grenada, the USA, England, and Barbados, including Anne-Marie Mason, Laura, Louise, Rosalie and Gloria Mangle, Peggy Benjamin, Pansy and Holly Halal, Sharon Peters, Shirley Ann Harford, Israel Gunpot, Crystalline Pasadie, Rolly and Ronnie Duncan, Nicole Duncan Chance, Pansy Griffith, Chrislyn Charles, Pamela Benjamin, Winnie Benjamin, Euris Segrest, Shirley Benjamin and Margaret Ned. Sister-in-law of Llewellyn Duncan and Eslyn Lalit. Grandaunt of many including Brenda and Brendan Duncan, Harry and Mark Mangle. Many other relatives and friends including Rosalind Lucas, Ruthlyn Benjamin, the Baldio family of Grove, Lynette Narayan, Freddie Sanderson, Sister Bud, the Mangle, Halal and Mullah families of Clogier, Oslin Thomas, Dario Alexander, the pastors and members of the Grove and Clogier Seventh-day Adventist churches, and friends and neighbours of Clogier and Grove. The funeral of the late Magdalene Lalit, also known as Magdalene Tilloch, of Cornet's Walk, Grove, who resided at Clogier St. John, will take place on Wednesday, March 8th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grove Seventh-day Adventist Church, and entombment will be at the Douglaston Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Sybil Goulbin Matthew, also known as Mammy Nodge, of Moran St. John, passed away on Sunday, 12th February 2023, at the age of 87. She was the mother of Brian, Moses, Johnny, Errol, Michael, George, Frank and Trinidad, Cecilia, Shirley, Mona, Alice, Claudette, and Loris. Grandmother of 54, including Sean, Harriet, Brittany, Arlene, Steve, Venice, David, Damien, Mikel, Jude, Rena, Janelle, Jimmy, Junior, Jerry, Ryan, Samantha, Sammy, Shalisha, Shadona, Michael, and Brian. Great-grandmother of 24, including Garvin, Dion, Tyler, Makila, Liam, Aiden, Aaliyah, Isaiah, John, Jemiah, Elizabeth, and Alexander. Mother-in-law of Bob Marley, Michael, Simon, Aaron, Rita, Dorothy, and Zalika in Trinidad. Many nieces and nephews including Lena, Annie, Bio, Toyo, Miriam, Nicole, and Youthlin. Many other relatives and friends including Roger Williams and family, the Matthew, Tika, Ned, and Bernard families of Moran, the Goulbin family of Concord, Alicia in the USA, Catherine, the Merger, Dwarika and Maureen families of St. Patrick, Elaine Charles, Matthew Stephen and family, members of the Victoria and Grove Seventh-day Adventist churches, and friends and neighbors of Moran, Grosse Pointe, Cloget and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Sybil Goulbin Matthew, also known as Mammy Nodge of Moran St. John, will take place on Thursday, March 9th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grove Seventh-day Adventist Church, and entombment will be at the Douglaston Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Matthias Herbert McIntyre, also known as Herbert Bridgman of Byland St. Andrew, died on Tuesday, 14th February 2023, at the age of 94. Left to mourn his wife Anne Bridgman, children Louise, Lucy, Elsa and Dora Bridgman, all residing in Canada, Gail Bridgman in the USA, and Bernie Dubiset, Vicky Robertson, and Eric Bridgman, all in Grenada. Sister Margaret de Bellet in Grenada. Brother Morris Vincent in Jamaica. 9 grandchildren including Kira, Kaylee and Siobhan Bridgman, and Narlin Roberts, Nixon and Erilyn Robertson. 5 great-grands. 5 sons-in-law including Clarence Dubiset and Errol Robertson. Caregivers Geraldine Phillip, Rhonda Francis, Suzanne Williams, and Sally Ann Andrew. Other relatives and friends including Kanasha Bridgman, Delma Thomas, Parliamentary Representative, Dr. Andy Bernard, Ronald Bridgman, Nurse Giselle Fletcher, Nurse Elwise Charles, the Bridgman and McIntyre families of Bylands, New Hampshire, and Paraclete, Camelin Douglas, parishioners of St. Matthew's R.C. Church and St. Michael's R.C. Church, and friends and neighbors of Bylands and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Matthias Herbert McIntyre, also known as Herbert Bridgman of Byland St. Andrew, will take place on Thursday, March 9th at 11 a.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. Matthew's R.C. Church, Birchgrove, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Dwayne Dwight Cuffey of Belle Isle St. David, a former employee of the Ministry of Health, passed away on Thursday, February 9th, 2023, at the age of 36. He was the son of Telma Cuffey and Francis Klein, brother of Donlin, Donnell and Devon Cuffey, and Silma James in the USA, nephew of Elsia Thompson, Gloria, Sherma, David and Anthony Cuffey in Grenada, Junior, Gordon, Venny and Anthony Klein in the USA. Many other relatives and friends including Derek Thompson and family, Bernard Joseph, Judy Ann Matheson, Keisha and Kelly Cuffey of Bellevue, Maeve Hayes in the USA, Adina, Kimberly, Vanelle and Vanessa Cuffey, Merlin Colvin and family, Nicole and Michelle Cambridge, and many other relatives and friends. The funeral of the late Dwayne Dwight Cuffey of Belle Isle St. David will take place on Thursday, March 9th at 1:30 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Church of the Immaculate Conception, Petite Espérance, St. David, and interment will be at the St. David Catholic Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Patricia Brenda Bernadine, née Francis, also known as Pat, of Upper Depredine Street, Grove, St. John, passed away on Sunday, 12th February 2023, at the age of 58. Left to mourn are her husband, Seaton Bernadine, mother, Evelyn Francis, children Jeremy, Gerald and Jordan Francis, Javier, Jabari, and Jadine Bernadine, siblings Claudia Francis, Sarah Francis Kariuk, Steve Francis, Leroy Francis, Chris Calica, and Jerry Nicholas. Grandchild, P.J. Elijah Alexander Bernadine. Other relatives and friends, Cindy Modeste, Princess Alexander, Jeanette Bernard, Hazel Ann Young, Jeanette Bernadine and family, Lorna Adams and family, Joan Harry and family, Gracelyn Frederick and family, Eunice St. Paul and family, Ma Louise George and family, Rosemary Charles and family, Lucia Aline and family, Kaisha Joseph and family, Hazel Mills and family, Ruthlyn and family, and Alice Sabazan, and friends and neighbors of Grove Estate, Moran, Cloget, and surrounding areas. The funeral of the late Patricia Brenda Bernadine, née Francis, also known as Pat, of Upper Depredine Street, Grove, St. John, will take place on Thursday, March 9th at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the St. Peter's Catholic Church Grove, and interment will be at the Douglaston Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Teresa Jo Noriega, also known as Sherma and Tanti, of New Hampshire St. George, a former employee of the East Women's Cooperative, passed away on Sunday 19th January 2023. She was the wife of Robert Leonard Noriega, mother of Mark in Trinidad, Marcia, Micah, Marcelli, and Marcellus, grandmother of Mariella and Malika, step-grandmother of Tiara, sister of Sharon Bridgman Scott and Henry Timmy Bridgman in New York, Runa Burke in St. Vincent, Donna Ball in Bermuda, and Beverly Dawn Phillip, aunt of many including Kent, Caleb, Tori, Monique, Lucas, Roka, Martin, Vashti, Marlon, and Tanique, aunt-in-law of Abina, Melissa, Sunshine, Masimba, Stefan, Mandy, Dahlia, Mulugata, Aisha, Makesi, and Mayosi, sister-in-law of Martin Scott, Oswald Burke, Alfred Phillip, Kent Ball, Miguel Johnson, Michael Johnson, Desiree Bridgman, Melina Kwamina, Margot Johnson, and Christine Charles. Niece of many, including Myrtle Placid, Amelia Greenwich, Alberta Valsin, Charles, Nathaniel, Ellie and Daston Murrell, Dennis Tanker Bridgman, Sampson, and Mandeville Paris. Many cousins, other relatives and close friends, including the Bridgman, Mackey, Edwards, Murrell, and Williams families, Dr. Keith Mitchell, Nimrod Oliver, Sheldon Scott, Andre Donald, Mommy George, Miss Pink, Sister Lena Entwine, Miss Charles, Nurse Elva Edwards, the Northeast Women's Cooperative Workers, and friends and neighbors of New Hampshire and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Teresa Jo Noriega, also known as Sherma and Tanti, of New Hampshire St. George, will take place on Thursday, 9th March at 1 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Wallace Memorial Church, and interment will be at the family cemetery in New Hampshire. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Elizabeth Rouget, also known as Dora Noel of Munich, who resided at Rivulet Lane, Grenville St. Andrew, member of the Grenville Roman Catholic Mothers Union, passed away on Friday, 17th February 2023, at the age of 93. She was the mother of Desmond Lord, former teacher at the St. Andrews R.C. School, grandmother of Darius Andrews, Deirdre Andrews Date, Vernessa Gilbert, and Kazim Joseph, great-grandmother of 8, sister of Mona Batiste and Hermelin Benjamin in Grenada, and Lucy Francis in the USA, aunt of many including Urban Mason, Kay, Barry, Sean, Anne, Gemma, Glenda, Wilfred, and Cynthia. Many other relatives and close friends, including the Rouget and Noel families of Munich, Belle Isle in the USA and England, the Charles family of Happy Hill, the parish priest and parishioners of the Grenville Roman Catholic Church, members of the Mothers Union, the guys by Mr. Peter's shop and Maxie's bar, and neighbors and friends of Rivulet Lane, Grenville, and surrounding areas. The funeral service for the late Elizabeth Rouget, also known as Dora Noel of Munich, who resided at Rivulet Lane, Grenville St. Andrew, will take place on Friday, March 10th at 2 p.m. Funeral service will be held at the Grenville R.C. Church, and interment will be at the Grand Bras Cemetery. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Anthony Benedict Etienne, also known as Cess and Tony, of Lassages St. David, passed away on Saturday, 18th February 2023, at the age of 61. The funeral arrangements for the late Anthony Benedict Etienne, also known as Cess and Tony, of Lassages St. David, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home. Kenneth David Burke, of 269 Woodland St. George, passed away on Saturday, 25th February 2023, at the age of 86. The funeral arrangements for the late Kenneth David Burke, of 269 Woodland St. George, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lacqua Brothers Funeral Home. Bernard Jerry George, also known as Plim and Black Boy, of Croshew St. Andrew, passed away on Saturday 25th February 2023 at the age of 65. The funeral arrangements for the late Bernard Jerry George, also known as Plim and Black Boy, of Croshew St. Andrew, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Lackwell Brothers Funeral Home. Evadne Mary Gill Alexander, also known as Vads, of Birchgrove St. Andrew, passed away on Monday, February 20th, 2023, at the age of 71. The funeral arrangements for the late Evadne Mary Gill Alexander, also known as Vads of Birchgrove St. Andrew, will be given in a subsequent broadcast. Funeral arrangements entrusted to Bailey's Funeral Home.
The management and staff of MTV extend deepest condolences to those of you whose loved ones have passed on. Thank you for watching.
The Bible, this book, familiar to every person on the face of the earth today, gives us directions for our life. When death comes, there is great sorrow to the family and friends and loved ones of the one that has passed on. But if we put our trust in the Lord Jesus Christ and we follow the instructions of this book, we know we will meet again. We don't take it lightly. We don't take it for granted. There must be a decision, because without a decision, the decision is made to be separated from God. So put your trust in the Lord. Believe. The thief on the cross said, Lord, consider me. And Jesus said, today you would be with me this very hour. And they died together. So put your trust in the Lord, and God bless you during your time of grief and bereavement. Put your trust in the Lord.